We'll call to order the Truckee Meadows Regional Plan Governing Board for April 11th, 2019, and we will start with a roll call.
Jenny Breckus. Here. Naomi Dewar. Absent. Bonnie Weber. Here. Marsha Burke-Bigler.
Here.
Charlene Bybee.
Here.
Devin Reese. Here. Donald Abbott. Ed Lawson. Vaughn Hartung.
Present.
Jean Herman.
Here.
And Paul Anderson.
Here.
And also, I believe, Ron Smith.
Here.
And non-voting member Katie Simon Hall.
Thank you very much. Sounds like we have a quorum, and then we will go to the salute of the flag, and we'll ask Mr. Whittemore if he would lead us in the salute to the flag, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Whittemore. And with that, I am looking for approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Well, I guess not. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And also approval of the minutes. Any changes, board members, to the minutes?
So moved.
Oh. Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And with that, we will go to public comment.
I have a few for this item. Wesley Griffin, and then after that will be Kim Tracy.
Mr. Griffin? I gotta put glasses on, I can't see. No wonder I don't know what's going on.
Good afternoon. I'm Wesley Griffin.
Good morning, or
Nice
afternoon.
to see you again.
Nice to see you also.
Feeling like this is my second home sometimes. You know?
I know the feeling.
I'm here to speak in favor of the school at Wild Creek being considered as a project of regional significance. And we feel like this is important for so many reasons. I can't even hardly list them all, but one of them is that this is our public space. This is our recreational space. This is our green space. Our regional plan states that that's one of the primary goals of the regional plan is to preserve recreational space and green space. And the public process through in setting the school up and even considering it there was actually circumvented, in our opinion. We were not given any kind of due notice before this was brought before several public bodies and supposedly agreed to at that point. We pointed out that in the consideration of Wild Creek for the school, before we brought it up, there wasn't even a Plan B. And we're talking $200 to $300 million of our tax dollars that'll be spent on this school. Not to mention that from the latest reports that we've seen, we're going to lose 18 holes of golf. That's worth to the public probably around $20 million, 18 holes of golf. Where's our next public park going to be? Where is it going to be? Anybody know? Who's going to pay for it? So why are we going to forfeit valuable recreational space, green space, that we can't afford to even buy, but we're going to forfeit it when there's a multitude of other areas around that this school could be put on? When we pointed out that there was no Plan B, they decided to have a very quick, what I like to call a CYA. I'm sure you all know what that means. Plan to see if there was some other sites. I asked if I could sit in on that, and I was denied. So what we have here is people who don't want to hear what the public has to say. They just want to come up with their own ideas, and it just kind of gets ramrodded through. This needs to be considered as a plan of regional significance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is,
Next, I have Kim Tracy, and then after that will be George Lee.
thank you.
Hello, good morning. My name is Kim Tracy. I live in Sparks, and I'm going to reiterate again what I stated last night at the Planning Commission meeting, which has made me less than popular, I'm quite sure. But I wanted to express the frustration that we all feel out here in the public, and there's a couple of things that happen here. One is that we were at the Planning Commission meeting when they first discussed having the meeting with the WCSD, and several of us expressed a general interest, or a strong interest either, in being included in that meeting. Chairman Gower at that time suggested I give my name and email and contact number to Ms. Robinson. I was not contacted. I was not notified of either of the meetings. I was told that certainly the public would be included. We were not. So the process is reduced to us coming here, being allowed 3 minutes to speak, never ask questions, and never get feedback. So the community, even though everybody says the community is very involved and the meetings are out there and they can come to the meetings, we've been coming for 2 years. And let me tell you, we don't get a lot of satisfaction at this point. I feel like you guys all have to listen to us and be polite, and we understand that, and it's probably as painful for you as it is for us by hearing the same things over and over and over again. But when we can't interact at any given time and ask questions, and quite truthfully, often the 3 minutes that we get is before the presentation, so any extra questions that we have are not addressed. So last night, a perfect example of what happened is Chairman Gower asked Pete Etchert to address the pros and cons of both option 1 and option 2. And as you probably know, at this point, they've selected option 2, which does not name schools as PRS. And by so doing, they asked him the question, what is the pros and cons of each? And he somewhat skillfully said, I prefer option 2, and went on to discuss why. And never once did he address option 1, nor did anybody on the committee call him to task on that. Nobody said, why have you not answered the question directly? Why did you not say what you prefer and what you don't prefer about option 1 versus option 2? That was it. Option 1 was never even discussed. I think most of us would like to see the school have another level of oversight, which would mean putting them as a PRS, an updated facilities plan. Something else the committee seemed to not acknowledge is that at one point, he said, well, we have a 5-year updated facilities plan. We'll know a general area. That's not good enough. We need specifics, absolute specifics, if you decide to go with option 2, which I'm hoping that you'll reconsider and look more at a PRS. I think that would make the public much happier. But in any case, I just want you to know that it wasn't discussed. And there were some things that were brought up, like the numbers and of students versus students and faculty both, and how they're trying to eliminate PRS from including elementary schools. And quite frankly, I'm not sure why that is. When you bring in 800 people, you bring in 800 people. I don't care how old they are. If they're not driving their own cars, their parents are driving the cars. So that brings in the traffic. So we'd like you to think long and hard about what the committee did. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last I have for this item is George Lee.
Is this on? Okay. Hi, everybody. George Lee, Sparks, Nevada. This is, once I reiterate a lot of the stuff that Kim had to say, because we have been back to meeting after meeting. I just talked to Mr. Etchart, and I asked him the one question that is salient to this, and it's, is this or is this not infill? That means the other word for infill, that's a pleasant word, but the other word for infill is urban renewal. Now, when you do urban renewal, do you watch those projects? You see where it's so major that it does exactly what it says. It's reshaping entire neighborhoods. The addition of this project would completely reshape this neighborhood, and as well as the traffic along McCarran, the traffic on El Rancho. I know that There's loads of traffic going up and down Sullivan every day. Now, once those roundabouts are in, that's going to be completely change everything. People are going to be driving through city streets to avoid those things because they will. That's just because it's an inconvenience. However, the point is, when you take a school that's in excess of 2,000 students, plus people who work there, plus service, plus trucks, plus everything. I mean, just not to mention the parents and other school students and things that come in for games and intramural projects and things like that. We're talking about a lot of traffic. I don't think that their traffic study that they did was sufficient. They did a traffic study based on 2,100 students. And in the past, they talked about having as many as 28 or 2,900 students. I think it was 28 something. Expanding it out, plus having students, when they get tight, they fill the schools up, just like Spanish Springs is full, which means more traffic that they're not planning for. That's going to happen after the fact, after it gets looked at, and after it gets through your oversight, if you decide to do any oversight on it. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll speak again.
I have no more for this item.
Okay, any other public comment? We will close public comment, bring it back to the board. And with that, we will go to the consent agenda. Madam Manager, what do you want me to call you anyway, by the way?
Whatever you like. So item A for possible action, consideration and possible acceptance of the FY 2018-19 third quarter work program report and the fiscal year 2018-19 budget comparison report.
Commissioner Breckus.
Yeah, thank you. Just wondering, where are we at on our next year's budget setting?
In terms of the conversation around next year's budget, I have met with the managers from both Sparks and Washoe County, and my meeting with the manager for the city of Reno is tomorrow afternoon. The draft budget has been drafted based on the conversation that we had in December. I've taken it forward to, as I said, Sparks and Washoe County. Tomorrow will be Reno, and I'll be bringing it to your April 25th governing board meeting in congruence with the request last year to begin the process earlier and engage with management.
Okay, so we did review it in December and had discussion at this body, because we're the people, not the managers.
That's correct.
But you're going through them on the logistics, and okay, I understand. I didn't know we were set for April 25th. I see the next meeting is June 13th, but we will need an April 25th meeting to adopt the budget.
And there are a few other items as well, and the
Okay.
chair has identified that an April 25th special meeting would be useful for this board, and I have sent a holdout to your calendars.
Okay.
Anything else? Any other questions, comments, concerns on the consent agenda? I'm looking for a motion.
I'll move.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment?
I have none for this item.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And then we will move on to the business of the day. And so the first item is a public hearing. So we are opening our public hearing, and we will start with our staff and Christopher
Colin.
Oh, Dolan, it's your birthday. Everybody sing happy birthday. Well, you don't want to hear me sing, trust me, but happy birthday.
Would you like me to read the agenda item?
Yes, please.
Item 7A for possible action, public hearing. Item A1, or AI, excuse me, A1. Regional Plan Amendment, RPA 18-004, possible adoption of RPGB Resolution 19-02, regarding an amendment to the boundaries of the Reno-Sted Corridor Joint Plan, located on Map 6 of the Regional Plan, by removing an approximately 559.3 acre site, located approximately 1,700 feet south of US 395 and Red Rock Rock Road interchange. As well, this is also item A2, Regional Plan Conformance Review, and this is a City of Reno Master Plan Amendment, Echeverria Peavine Property, CR 18-015, consideration of appeal pursuant to NRS 278.02826 and Section 4.11 of the RPGB Regulations on Procedure of the Regional Planning Commission's determination of nonconformance for the proposed master plan amendment. The approximately 559.3 acre site is located approximately 1,700 feet south of the US 395 and Red Rock Road interchange. And I'll give you Chris.
Yes.
Before Mr. Tully starts, and thank you for recognizing me, would it be wise, and please tell me, legal and Mr. Tully and Madam Chair, would it be wise to have Mr. Azevedo lay out what's before us?
Probably a very good idea. Mr. Acevedo, would you do that for us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Norm Azevedo. Item 7A, 1 and 2 are as follows. The first provision is a proposed amendment to your comprehensive regional plan. The RPC made a recommendation to you to approve this particular amendment, and the amendment is to remove the approximately 560 acres from the joint corridor plan. That requires a simple majority vote of the total membership, so 6 votes in this instance. The second item is an appeal from a finding of nonconformance by the RPC of a proposed master plan amendment from the City of Reno. That, again, is an appeal before this body, and so you can affirm that appeal, you can reverse that decision of the RPC, or you can modify it to whatever degree you believe appropriate. The scenario here is a little bit more complex than we typically deal with, in that the first item, the proposed amendment, will remove that from the joint corridor. If that were to be removed and the finding of the RPC affirmed, it would leave that land without an appropriate land use density. And so that is, from a legal perspective, problematic. And at this juncture, I'll defer to staff to get into the details, but that sets the stage, I believe.
Okay, Commissioner Hartung?
No, thank you, Madam Chair, for indulging me.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, we will go to staff. Mr. Tully.
All right, good afternoon, Chair, members of the board, Chris Tully, Team RPA for the record. This agenda item, as detailed, contains 2 interrelated cases, a regional plan amendment to remove the site from the Reno Sted Corridor Joint Plan, and an associated master plan conformance review in which TMRPA has received and appealed to the Regional Planning Commission's determination for the case. To clarify, the RPC makes a recommendation on a regional plan amendment, and the RPG would normally hear that case type. The RPGB also hears an appeal of an RPC determination on a master plan conformance review. And then finally, the City of Reno asked for these 2 to move forward to the RPG at the same time. Then to go over the presentation. So this presentation, like the staff report, will cover both associated cases. First, we'll cover the summary of previous action, followed by presentation on the regional plan amendment and master plan conformance review details, and then presentation on the appeals will be conducted by the appellants, the City of Reno, and the property owner. And then finally, TMRPA staff will cover the actions for today and the possible motions. So again, we'll go over the previous action. And then to clarify the case numbers for the board and members of the public, RPA stands for Regional Plan Amendment, and CR stands for a Master Plan Conformance Review. So at the November 14, 2018 RPC meeting, the RPC voted to recommend adoption of the Regional Plan Amendment via a vote of 6-3, and found the proposed Master Plan Amendment does not conform with the regional plan by a vote of 7-2. The City of Reno filed an objection, which resulted in the Master Plan Amendment being considered by the RPC again on January 24, 2019 for a final determination. At that meeting, the RPC affirmed their original determination by a vote of 5-3. And next, we'll go over the Regional Plan Amendment. The Reno Sted, oops, there we go. The Reno-Sted Corridor Joint Plan was initially adopted in 1999 as a way to better coordinate planning efforts in the Reno-Sted area. Policy 421 and Policy 422 of the regional plan allows for the designation of the Reno-Sted Corridor Joint Plan area and requires Washoe County and the city of Reno to adopt a master plan for that area that must be consistent with the regional plan. Finally, this Reno City Council and Washoe County Commission both voted to remove the subject site from the joint plan and sponsored this requested regional plan amendment. The approximately 559.3 acre site is located 1,700 feet south of the US 395 and Red Rock Road interchange. The full extent of the Reno-Sted Corridor Joint Plan is shown here in blue crosshatch, with the subject site to be removed from the joint plan outlined in black with a crosshatch. On this slide, you can see a breakdown of the service areas by jurisdiction. The city of Reno is identified in green, and Washoe County is identified in yellow. The site is located in the city of Reno corporate boundary. And then here is an aerial image from 2016 for reference. And then we'll go over the review criteria for a regional plan amendment. Policy 4.3.6 of the regional plan identifies 6 factors that the Regional Planning Commission and Regional Planning Governing Board must consider, and those are listed on this slide. As previously noted, this request would alter the current boundaries of the joint plan and remove its provisions from the subject property. An increase in residential density is possible as a result of the removal from the Reno-Sted Corridor Joint Plan, but the land uses have been translated as closely as possible between the existing and proposed land uses. The proposed amendment will not impact the availability, timing, and phasing of infrastructure. The site does contain development constraints area for slopes. This is addressed through policies in the City of Reno Master Plan. In relation to the goals and policies of the regional plan, regional planning staff has not identified any significant issues with the review criteria. These subjects are analyzed in greater detail in the master plan conformance review and are also covered later in this presentation. The RPC, as noted, did vote to recommend the RPGB adopt the proposed regional plan amendment at their November 14th, 2018 meeting. And finally, this is one of the 2 decisions we are asking you to make today. And next, we'll cover the master plan conformance review details. The proposal is, so again, this is the master plan amendment overview. The proposal is to amend the master plan designations from the Reno-Sted Corridor Joint Plan designations of high-density rural and general rural to City of Reno Master Plan land use designations of unincorporated transition and large lot neighborhood. And then the details regarding the acreages are shown on the slide. And then again, for reference, here is a regional location map showing the property. One of the main facts of this case is that there is additional density possible through the master plan amendment from the Reno-Sted Corridor Joint Plan to the City of Reno land use designations. To clarify regional's role in reviewing land use changes, we consider master plan amendments and the density specified therein for the purpose of determining whether they conform with the goals and policies of the regional plan. Greater context about densities is provided through zoning. The RPGB is only looking at a change in the master plan land use, which has a greater density range. If this is approved, future zoning map amendments to intensify the land would be under the purview of the City of Reno. And finally, the City of Reno Master Plan was found to be in conformance with the 2012 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. Regional planning staff does not review development codes for conformance with the regional plan. It is the City of Reno's responsibility to ensure that the 2 are consistent. And here's a review criteria for a master plan conformance review. And these points to follow were provided to the RPC during the original presentation for the Master Plan Conformance Review. Policy 4.1.3 of the Regional Plan identifies 6 factors that the RPC must consider, and those are listed on this slide. An increase in residential density is possible as a result of the removal from the joint plan, as noted. The existing to proposed land uses were translated using a translation table in the City of Reno Development Code. The land uses have been translated, attempting to maintain a similar overall character. The project site is currently subject to the City of Reno's concurrency management system that ensures adequate public facilities and infrastructure for sewer, water, flood management, police, fire, traffic, parks, and schools will be available at the time impacts from new development occur. These requirements will remain applicable if the amendment is approved. And then for reference, TMRPA staff did recommend approval of this item to the RPC. And then to go over the RPC findings of nonconformance. So at the November 14, 2018 RPC meeting, the RPC determined that the proposed master plan amendment did not conform with a comprehensive regional plan because the commission cannot make finding number 1 for regional form and pattern, number 2 for development constraints, number 4 for public services and infrastructure, and number 6 for cumulative impacts. The RPC then affirmed its determination at the subsequent January 24, 2019 meeting. And then following that meeting, the property owner and the City of Reno filed an appeal pursuant to NRS Section 278.0282, subsection 6, and Section 4.11 of the RPGB Regulations on Procedure. These appeals were provided to the RPGB in attachments 10 and 11 of the staff report. And then finally, the RPGB is being asked to make a determination on this appeal. And now we'll provide space for the appellants, City of Reno, and then followed by the property owner to present their case. So at this time, we'll turn it over to the City of Reno for the presentation of their appeal.
Good afternoon, Heather Manzo, Associate Planner with the City of Reno for the record. Chris did a really good job of outlining the details that are contained in your staff report. You have a lot of background information that was provided in the report due to the number of meetings that we've had on this and the actions that have been taken. Very simply, when this went to the July 30th, 2018 joint City Council and Board of County Commissioners meeting, both bodies approved the request to remove the property from the Reno-Sted Joint Corridor Plan. At that time, the applicant had proposed, and the Planning Commission, Joint Planning Commission, had denied a request to allow for a master plan amendment for an intensification of that land. And the Joint Board of County Commissioners and City Council voted to deny the request to intensify the property and to simply apply the City of Reno master plan designations that were most closely related with those within the Reno-Sted Corridor Joint Plan. And so, as was noted, and if I can please have the overhead. As was noted in the table that Chris provided for you in the presentation materials, this is the comparison between the Reno-Sted Joint Corridor Plan designations and those of the City of Reno. With the approval of the removal of the site from the Reno-Sted Corridor Joint Plan, there is no exact like-for-like translation to City of Reno designations. And so the designations that were identified that would be applied to the property are large lot neighborhood and unincorporated transition. There is no less intense designation within the City of Reno master plan. So with that, we have requested that in consideration of removing the property from the joint corridor plan, that the City of Reno master plan designations most closely like those of the adopted joint plan be approved for the site. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have as we move through this process today. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. For the record, Andy Drilling with Wood Rogers, representing the Echeverria family, the property owner and appellant. Thank you for the opportunity to present before you today. I'm trying to keep this presentation as simple as possible. Chris gave you definitely the more in-depth overview. These are two parcels that were annexed into the city of Reno in 2009. They are in the corridor, the Reno-Sted Corridor Joint Plan. As been mentioned, that has been approved by a joint Washoe County Commission, Reno City Council hearing, and before you today is really just to uphold that. So we're really keeping it simple, just looking for two actions for you to affirm the Regional Planning Commission's decision to remove this property from the joint plan, and then part and parcel to that, reverse and correct their decision and assign City of Reno master plan designations, which we feel is obviously most appropriate to the ongoing planning of this property. Once it's removed from the joint plan, it makes perfect sense that it should have City of Reno designations. It creates a real difficult situation, not just for the applicant, but for the city to enforce this going forward, should it have county designated land uses and city zoning without the joint plan to connect those. Excuse me. This has been a long and arduous process. We actually submitted this application in October of 2017. The joint plan process, meaning the joint NAB-CAB, Joint Planning Commission, and then obviously the Joint City Council and County Commission, was an over 10-month process. It took about 3 to 4 months between steps in order to schedule those meetings, get both bodies together. Then we get into the regional plan process, and just because of the confusion, I think, that was created by the Planning Commission, the Regional Planning Commission, we've been in this process for about 9 months, so 19 months in total. The first step that we're asking is to remove this, to confirm the removal of this from the Reno-Sted Corridor Joint Plan. The plan is outdated and does not reflect the City of Reno's newly adopted Reimagine Reno Master Plan. The joint plan was adopted in 1999, and it set a sunset of, or it was set to establish planning for the Reno-Sted corridor area for a period of 20 years. So we are at the sunset of that plan. I know it's been discussed at the regional level as well as at the city level that it's probably time to sunset that plan. So looking at it and analyzing this, approximately 50% of the area that's inside of the city of Reno has actually been removed over the years. So this is not something new. This is this application before you, this regional plan amendment is consistent with other actions that have been taken over the years. As I mentioned in the last slide with the process that's in the corridor joint plan, it's an antiquated and cumbersome process. In addition, since the adoption of the joint plan, we have new regional planning standards that were adopted in the early 2000s that established cooperative planning standards. So any planning that goes on in this property in the future would be subject to cooperative planning, so it would have review by the county. It would go to the county CAB, so we would have input along the way. It just wouldn't go to those joint planning commission or joint city council, board of county commission processes. The second action, really simply put, is just a translation of the county designations to city designations. And the maps on the screen may look a little confusing, but if you follow along, it's a linear process. So the map on the upper left is the existing master plan designations in the county, high-density rural and general rural. Those translate per the table that's in the City of Reno's municipal code to large lot neighborhood and unincorporated transition. And then that going into the bottom right corner is compatible with the underlying City of Reno zoning designations so that we have zoning that complies with the underlying master plan designations. When the joint City Council County Commission approved this by resolution, in the resolution actually calls for the City of Reno designations to be assigned to this property. So again, just making this consistent with that resolution, with the removal of this from the joint plan, it's totally appropriate for this to have City of Reno designations. The existing, and as I mentioned, existing City of Reno zoning complies with that. Some of the benefits of this, the land use and zoning conforms to the City of Reno's Reimagine Master Plan, so we're taking into account that newly adopted master plan that the City of Reno put quite a bit of effort into over the last few years. This would allow for the property to be planned under one jurisdiction instead of the two jurisdictional process that was in the joint plan. We still have the cooperative planning aspect to this, so there is that aspect of having the county still being able to weigh in on the future development of this. And just due to the sheer size of this property at 560 acres, odds are very good that this would trigger a project of regional significance in the future. And so any projects that would come forward would still be elevated up to the regional planning process to be reviewed for regional significance. So with that, we encourage you to again, affirm the removal of this from the joint plan and then reverse the decision of the Regional Planning Commission and assign the City of Reno designations, which are a direct translation from county to city designations. We are here to answer any questions. Members from the Echeverria family are also here to answer any questions, and we appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dearling. Commissioner Hartung.
Madam Chair, thank you. By way of disclosure, I think it's necessary at this time. I have a relationship and a longstanding relationship with the Echeverria family. It in no way will materially affect my ability to make a decision today. I will also add that I have never known them to give their word and go back on that word. They have always been very forthright in all the dealings that I've ever had with them. So I wanted to put that on the record. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Any other comments? We do have some more, a little bit more of the presentation. Thank you, Christopher.
So we'll go over the actions today and then the motions. So again, the RPGB should make a determination on the regional plan amendment, which is agenda item 7.A.1, and a final determination affirming, reversing, or modifying the RPC's action on the master plan conformance review case, which is agenda item 7.A.2. And then just for reference, these are the review criteria for an RPA, regional plan amendment. And this is the review criteria for a master plan conformance review case.
Thank you very much.
And then the possible motions. So the RPGB has a variety of options, and we're going to cover the two primary ones crafted by staff. So this option adopts the regional plan amendment and reverses the RPC's determination, and then option number 2, and these are both provided in the staff report. And this option, denies the proposed regional plan amendment and affirms the RPC's determination of nonconformance. And then again, we'll leave it here on this slide for the actions today. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments from anybody? Yes.
Ms. Monson, can you put up that table? I think it's on page 100 of the staff report. 101, it's the...
Is it the one that I put up?
Yeah, because I thought I saw a discrepancy between what you put up and what Mr. Dearling put up. So there's 400 acres that have a general rural master plan land use designation in the Reno Sted corridor plan area. That has a master plan. As it's been annexed, if it goes into City of Reno straight annexation master plans, that's UT 40, correct?
That would be correct.
And then he showed up a slide. I don't know if there's an ability to get up his slides where he had, it was rather complicated. There, he's showing no zoning. I don't understand what he meant by that. How do you interpret that?
Sure. Heather Manzo, Associate Planner for the record. And so with that, we have assigned the large lot 2.5 zoning designation to the northern portion of the site. At this time, the lower portion does not have a City of Reno zoning designation. It's actually zoned within Washoe County. And so that translation with the assignment of a master plan designation would be UT 40.
So why didn't he show UT 40 up there then? Because he's showing LLR 2.5.
LLR 2.5 on that northern portion is correct.
Then why is it not showing UT 40? Why is it showing no zoning there? Shouldn't it be UT 40 under the way you're interpreting it?
I think what Mr. Dearling's presentation shows is what the existing zoning is today, and the City of Reno has not assigned zoning to that lower portion.
But we haven't assigned it to the other higher portion either. That's just based on a translation.
We have assigned zoning to the northern portion.
Why didn't we assign it to the southern?
I'm sorry, I don't have the full history on how zoning was applied to the property when it was annexed.
Where's the annexation ordinance?
2009 is when it was annexed.
We don't do annexation ordinances without assigning zoning, so why don't we have that? Was that an annexation ordinance in error?
I couldn't confirm that for you right now. What I can say is that with the master plan designation of general rural in the joint plan, the appropriate zoning and the zoning that would be assigned to the site would be UT 40.
Who's going to assign that? Because you can't do that administratively. That has to be done by an action of the city council. So if we pull it out, what are the mechanics here?
One moment. I'll turn it over to Sienna Reed to answer that. Thank you.
For the record, Sienna Reed, Senior Planner with the City of Reno. There are certainly areas within the City of Reno that don't currently have City of Reno base zoning. We don't have the full annexation ordinance history before you today. But one of the things that will be happening in the future for the City of Reno is going through all of the lands that have City of Reno master plan land use designations, identifying what might be appropriate conforming zoning districts. As part of our development code update, we are anticipating getting new zoning designations. And so that is something that we will be looking to do in the future. So moving forward, we would have an ordinance assigning zoning to this particular property. Through that process, it is also entirely possible that there would be another development request submitted for this particular property in advance of that, and that would move through the master plan amendment and zoning map amendment process.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the argument has been that there isn't any plan or project, and so in lieu of that, if they want to build something there tomorrow, we need to know what the zoning is. And so, and I guess, I mean, it's okay if we have this uncertainty, but I think it's an error because we should have zoning on every parcel. And I understand where we're going with the code and everything, but I'm just saying, like, today, what will the zoning be on that? Because every property in the city of Reno is zoned.
So our municipal code does provide for translation
Okay.
of Washoe County to City of Reno zoning. It is currently zoned general rural 1/40 in Washoe County. We would use the UT 40 zoning designation if something were to come in today on the property, because that is what our code sets up in terms of being able to process development applications that don't have an adopted City of Reno zoning designation.
Okay, so not to belabor it, but if we approve this, then the zoning map, the official zoning map of the city of Reno will assign UT 40 to that southern parcel.
We would have general rural in place. We would continue to implement a translation to UT 40 until we come forward with a zoning map amendment to UT 40 or another zoning designation if that were done through a separate process.
We need to have zoning in place on this property.
And we can certainly look to.
No, she's saying we're going to wait for a project and then do it. It doesn't work that way.
I'm saying we have to continue to use our code, which requires us to use equivalent zoning from Washoe County to the City of Reno. And moving forward, we will be looking to apply the UT 40 City of Reno zoning designation through ordinance, or we would be looking to apply a different designation if that were submitted in the future. We do not have a development request in-house. I think that has been stated on the record that any request to intensify this particular property would require future public hearings and future public processes.
I get all that. I don't want to belabor that. I think Reno has a problem if they annex land and cannot understand how to zone the property when it comes out of the plan. I think that we should be able to know how to do that. We can take that home. I don't have a problem doing this amendment because I understood the Reno Sted Corridor Joint Plan when it was adopted was had language that it pulled out properties upon adoption, annexation. Upon annexation, properties were being pulled out of the boundary. And then there was subsequent amendments to the Reno Sted Corridor Joint Plan that did not follow through that procedure, and that's how we got here. That's what I'm thinking happened.
It's my understanding that annexation doesn't remove you from the joint plan boundary.
Yeah.
You have to go through the regional plan amendment process that we're here before you today to do so.
And just as disclosure, I was the staff planner on this in 1998. I consider myself the author of this document, and I think that that's how it originally came out, and a mid-2000s amendment to this plan did not follow through with that procedure. So anyway, that's what I'm thinking.
Thank you, Councilwoman Breckus. Are there any other questions from any other commissioners?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Hartung.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Let's ask for public comment first.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have none for this item.
No one signed in? Okay, then Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to approve RPC Resolution 18-06, recommending the RPGB adoption of an amendment to the boundaries of the Reno-Sted Corridor Joint Plan shown on Map 6 of the 2012 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan as detailed in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the actions of the RPC. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And now we are looking for action on the second issue.
If I can make
Councilwoman
this go on.
Weber, you are on. I can hear
Okay,
you.
thank you. The light's not showing it. I'd like to make the motion to reverse the RPC's determination of nonconformance and find the proposed master plan amendment conforms with the adopted 2012 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any additional comments? Yes, sir. Oh, well, I thought we took public comment on the whole issue, but do we have any public comment?
I don't have any here with me
Okay,
for this specific
no
item.
public comment. So in that case, everybody, all those in favor of the motion to reverse the RPC decision signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Yes, ma'am. Are you eyeing yes or eyeing no?
I'm eyeing yes on the reversal.
Okay, thanks. All right, motion carries unanimously. So those two issues are done, and with that, we will move on to item B, which is also a public hearing.
Madam Chair, item 7B for possible action. Discussion and possible action on the Regional Planning Commission's recommendation and report regarding the RPC's consideration of 1, the development of schools as projects of regional significance, 2, the Washoe County School District's future facilities plan, and 3, potential regional plan policies and map relating to location of school facilities. And we have Planner Knox here to present.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Lauren Knox with Regional Planning. So the board last saw this item during the February RPGB meeting where staff and legal counsel provided an update on this item. We're here to provide another one. So as you can see overhead, we've had a variety of discussions regarding this topic. So I'm going to provide a brief overview so far of what has happened. So in December of 2018, this board directed staff to bring an item forward to the Regional Planning Commission regarding the potential amendment of the Project of Regional Significance Guidelines to include certain types of schools. In January, the Regional Planning Commission provided direction to staff to start working on drafting a potential resolution based on the feedback that they provided at that time. In February, staff provided the Regional Planning Commission and the Regional Planning Governing Board with some additional information and an update on the conversations had thus far. And then in March, the Regional Planning Commission hosted a workshop. So the March Regional Planning Commission was a public hearing, and it was a workshop with the Regional Planning Commission, and the Washoe County School District staff was also present, and there was a facilitated discussion. So during that meeting, it was a 2.5-hour meeting. There was a lot of really good conversation, but the RPC had identified that their concerns were really with some planning process alignment pieces, some traffic and shifts to traffic pattern potentials, and ensuring that there's public participation in this process as well as school development processes as a whole. The Regional Planning Commission also identified some potential outcomes, including an updated school facilities plan and the identification of potential school sites occurring earlier in the process. So Team RPA and Washoe County School District staff have been meeting to try and develop some policy choices and language for the Regional Planning Commission and Governing Board's consideration based off of all of the information that we had heard. So in front of you right now, we have 2 potential policy options. These really tried to address what we heard from the Planning Commission, from the Governing Board, from the public, from the school district staff, and from us in terms of how we move forward with this. So we really kind of describe them as two different options here. So there's the project of regional significance option, which is policy option 1, as well as a potential map, which is policy option 2. So for policy option 1, we would be looking at trying to require a 5-year school facilities plan, and that's updated every 5 years. That school facilities plan per NRS has to be found in conformance with the regional plan, so it's a standard conformance review. And what this really looks like is if a new school or a school expansion of over 800 students is contemplated and it's not in that facilities plan that the Regional Planning Commission would review, that would require the review of that school as a project of regional significance. This is a little bit later in the review stage for school development, and the school district has identified that's a potential risk for them, and having that be so late in the process. That also necessitates the adoption of a new PRS resolution. And then for policy option 2, the first bit of it is exactly the same as policy option 1, so requiring a 5-year school facilities plan that's updated every 5 years, found in conformance with the regional plan. Policy option 2 would also necessitate the creation of a map of school locations that are over 800 students. So that map would be adopted into the regional plan. And if a new school or a school expansion of over 800 students is contemplated, and that's not in the facilities plan, that would require a regional plan amendment to identify that site on the map that's adopted into the regional plan. So that's a little bit earlier in the process for school development. And also with that, regional plan amendments, as you know, go before the Planning Commission and the Governing Board. So there's more opportunity there for public involvement and for this board to be able to see that. With policy option 2, it wouldn't be a specific project level review on a school itself. We'd be looking at that school site as it relates to regional planning. So at last night's Regional Planning Commission meeting, we provided those 2 policy options and asked the Regional Planning Commission to weigh in on those options. The Regional Planning Commission, in terms of their comments, they really wanted to ensure that that facilities plan would be updated and would be created. There were concerns over ensuring that the total population of the school, including staff and faculty, is identified and discussed as part of that facilities plan discussion. And also the Regional Planning Commission made a motion to recommend consideration of policy option 2 by this body. So again, we've attempted to provide some potential policy options for the board's consideration. There are obviously a variety of things that can happen. You can go with both, neither. There's a variety of things can happen there, but we tried to have a starting point that was really based off of all of the conversations we've heard. I'm available for any questions you have, and we also have Washoe County School District staff available.
Cool, thank you very much. Quick question, when you say, or an amendment of 800 students, is that adding 800 students into the school, or is that now we have a total 800 population?
A total.
Okay, good. Commissioners, any questions? Thoughts, discussions? Okay, we'll hear from the school district. We've had a request to hear from the school district. Yeah.
And we have a board member too.
Yeah, of course we do. It should be on.
There he goes. Pete Etchart, Chief Operating Officer for the Washoe County School District. And just a couple of quick comments. First of all, I want to just thank staff, and I want to thank the Regional Planning Commission for the work they've really put into this. I mean, it was fantastic to have a workshop where we could really talk about this issue. And also we could learn what the Regional Planning Commission was really looking for out of this. And I think what we really found out of this, from my standpoint, is we're looking for the same thing. We're looking for transparency, we want accountability, we want to show the public exactly where we want to build schools. So I think it was a really good format for us to have. Past that, I'll say that we are completely committed to this 5-year facility plan. We believe that is fantastic for transparency, and we are totally committed to turning that in within 60 days of the regional plan update's acceptance. We also feel that with this policy option 2, that when we have this map, that we can provide that map as part of the regional plan update. So we will submit that earlier so that it can be included into the regional plan. And I think in a 5-year time horizon, we can be very specific about the sites that we are looking at. As we all know, we were behind the curve in having land acquisition, and we were facing overcrowding. We didn't have the land. Now that we actually do, our top priority was actually coming up and finding those sites for our future schools to be built on. So now as we're going forward, we do want to show that in a map that is available to the public. So we do like the regional plan amendment process. We feel it's earlier in the process, and it doesn't put taxpayer dollars at risk, because unfortunately with the project of regional significance process sometimes being so late, it can sometimes, I feel, conflict with our NRS statutes under 278 for land acquisition, and we just feel the regional plan amendment process is just better for all of us. So that is kind of my quick view. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Simon Holland, did you have a comment you'd like to make?
Is that, yeah, there we go. Nope, still not, is that working?
Yeah.
Is it on?
Believe it or not,
Okay.
you're on.
No light. Okay, thank you.
up a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Again, appreciate the opportunity to comment, Madam Chairman, and we also are very grateful for the collaboration to find some solutions that are based on the needs of all the entities. We absolutely want to make sure that school facility planning is an iterative and collaborative process, because we're responsive to our local government partners and to residential development. So we want to make sure that we don't get into a situation for the community and the region where we're behind the 8 ball again, not providing schools in a timely manner to eliminate any future overcrowding. We think that either one or two are viable solutions for us, but certainly the preference would be option 2.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from board members?
Madam Chair.
Ms. Breckus?
Well, okay, I'd like to think through a few scenarios, and maybe Ms. Reed can help me, is say at the city of Reno, and we're reaching a built-out scenario, I think, at the city of Reno in our current boundaries, but if a plan unit development comes in and they show a school site, how do you think that would work in concert with this facility plan? Because very often they show school sites. I would think that if a facility plan that the school districts put together comes through to the city of Reno or city of Sparks, whoever, and shows a plan unit, a school site, then that in and of itself is an amendment to this 5-year facility plan. And we would need to work in those mechanics over here to show that.
For the record, Sienna Reed, Senior Planner with the City of Reno. It's my understanding that the preferred option is to have the 5-year facilities plan be prepared on a regular and ongoing basis by the school district. And if there are school sites that come online between the time in which that plan would help inform the regional plan map of the school sites, that there would be a regional plan amendment process to add the school site to the map. And so using the example of a PUD, I think it would actually function very similar to a regional utility corridor, where you start the process through the local government, and at the appropriate time, there's an accompanying sponsorship of a regional plan amendment. This would be to add that school site to the map. So I think we're generally familiar with the overall operating aspects of the procedure.
I wonder if the sponsorship should be the jurisdiction or the school district, because it's their facility plan. And so maybe in these mechanics here, we need to find a way to get the school district. That's just one thing. And then has anyone given, and so I think that's just one thing we need to think about, because routinely there's these school sites being identified in there's plan unit developments, and I think it cuts both ways. I think what it cuts is someone thinks they're buying into this new community, and there's going to be an elementary school. And then 10 years, sometime later, the school district decides they're not going to put that there. That land goes back to the developer, and that developer is often thinking, oh, I'm going to put a new residential product here or put it commercial. And so I think the school district should have some buy-in. They do on those PUDs, but not so much. I think it has to sync up to the facility plan, so that the school district has been on record affirmatively that they're seeing a new community grow with this school. facility. I hear that a lot from people out there, is I thought we were getting this new school coming here. This new school is not coming here, and now I'm overcrowded over here, and I think that can help that. And then the other question is, has anyone given any thought to decommissioning schools? So the facility plan is here, and if the school district thinks they're decommissioning the school, how does that work? And then what about the charters and everything else that's not Washoe County sponsored? Who will engage in those?
Sure. So in terms of, for the record, Lauren Knox with Regional Planning. In terms of decommissioning schools, we haven't gone down that path yet. Washoe County School District may be able to answer that, but it would be, I would think, identified potentially in their school facilities plan, so we would see it at that point. And then in terms of the charter schools or private schools, so basically what we tried to capture here was any school over 800 students, so a larger magnitude school would have to come in and be seen if it's not in a facilities plan. Generally, these charter schools and private schools don't have a facilities plan, so at that point we would be seeing that project as well. But they are a little bit different than being part of the school district's facility plan.
So when this first facility plan of schools is adopted into the regional plan, is it going to show the current charter schools above 800?
I think yes, we would have to be looking into those current charter schools or private schools, and anything over 800 students would have to be identified on that map of schools within the regional plan.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, hang on just 1 minute, Commissioner Hartung. I think Ms. Simon Holland wanted to respond to
Thank you, Madam
something.
Chair. And great questions, Councilwoman Breckus. As staff said, we would anticipate that any decommissioning of a school would have a very long lead time and lots of public participation, so there would be relevant school facilities planning. It would show up in our school facilities plan, and I would echo that that will be an ongoing process. I don't want to imply that we would have a 5-year plan and we would never look at it again for 5 years, because certainly there are changes, just as you've said, with residential development. Many of the developers will identify a school site, and because of the penetration or how quickly the sellout occurs on that property, the school site may or may not be ready to be utilized. It may change in its level of schooling, but we would always do that in collaboration with the jurisdiction and with the development company. So I think that the intention is for there to be no surprises for anybody, for there to be a transparent process, and for us to utilize that school facilities planning process as the main tool. Can't really comment on the charter school piece, but I think you've raised some good questions. And again, we are absolutely committed to making sure that we are in sync with the local jurisdictions as well as the developments as they mature.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm still a little cloudy because regardless of having a 5-year school facility plan, that presupposes that there was some development that was occurring. What precipitated this was the Wild Creek site, which would have never been in a 5-year facility plan because it was never intended to be a school originally. It has been repurposed as a school. From my perspective, neither one of these really fit that planning process because I don't think the school district knew 5 years ago that this was going to be a school. It was still going to be a golf course. And so how could it have fit into a 5-year facility plan? We would have had to have updated it. Hold on just a moment, Madam Chair from the school board. So from my perspective, while I like the idea of having a 5-year facility plan and the maps and all of that, it still doesn't contemplate these sites that potentially could be identified and moved on quickly for repurposing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Simon Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this fits into the decommissioning scenario that Councilwoman Breckus identified, because Wild Creek is a function of Hug High School. It's a function of the deterioration of Hug High School, the overpopulation in other areas such as Spanish Springs. So we had to find another site, not because there was development immediately there, but we had to relieve overcrowding, particularly at Spanish Springs High School, and then repurpose Hug High School or refurbish and remodel and and fix Hug High School or decommission it. So both of those things have been known for some time. It's not that the Wild Creek site was the identified school facilities plan option 5 years ago, but we have known for some time that we had to do something with Hug High School, and we've known for some time that we have overcrowding in Spanish Springs and other high schools that will feed it.
And on a going forward basis, I believe that based on this proposal, I believe on a going forward basis, all new schools would come before this board, regardless of whether their site was pre-planned or not. So let's assume we're 10 years down the road and we now have to repurpose Reno High School. And so we're going to find a spot to repurpose, to decommission Reno High School or repurpose it to something else and find a spot for the children that will be living in that area. That would have to come before this regional governing board for a complete review.
And if I may, Madam Chair.
Certainly.
There's no argument from me with respect to that. What the question is that when you start choosing sites that are being repurposed and that are infill, as it were, it dramatically affects our ability to look at traffic patterns and from a design perspective. And I'll use Wild Creek as the example. It's a perfect example. McCarran was designed to handle a certain amount of traffic during peak flows. And while I recognize that traffic studies have been done, I believe that in many cases when we do traffic studies, they're erroneous because we don't look at those peak flow times. We look at it as an average over a 24-hour time period. And when you do that, I had sadly had the occasion to come home from a flight recently at 1:30 in the morning, and it was wonderful. The roads were amazing. I was unbelievably thrilled with how easy it was to get from the airport out to Spanish Springs because there, I could count nearly on one hand the number of cars with me along the way. So the problem is that, and this is why we've brought this in and talked about projects of regional significance, because they do dramatically impact existing infrastructure. When we do new sites, when we're looking at these maps and we're looking at these future sites, we can really build as an example, the middle school out in Spanish Springs, Sky Ranch. It's a wonderful example of how the roads will be built to accommodate, and as people move into the area, there's this expectation, hey, look, a school's already there. We had the same scenario with Spanish Springs High School where and with Shaw Middle School, and as you know, and I hate to thump this drum continuously, but I was part of that process, and these two major facilities were allowed to be put on a 2-lane road, and it is a nightmare getting in and out of there every single morning. Not so much in the afternoon because school lets out, so the peak PM traffic really doesn't conflict with the school traffic. My concern still is that as we start to utilize infill parcels, is that we're going to dramatically affect our ability to carry traffic. On Whittican, which goes down through Sparks and then eventually over into Reno. The project of Wild Creek, and while I know we're not talking about that in direct sense, when we bring these things forward, we need as much ability to look at all of the surrounding existing area, and is the infrastructure capable of handling that school being there?
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung, and I think your point is very valid, but I also think that infill will result in, regardless of what kind of infill it is, will result in the same type of concerns. I'll talk about Mayberry, and let's assume for a minute that we built condos in and around, that we allowed the city of Reno allowed the building of condos in and around the old nursery, and that would have clearly impacted traffic in that neighborhood. Since I live right around the corner from there, I can tell you for sure it would have, because that's a very busy street all the time. So I think as we go down the road, there's no question that infill projects of any type are going to impact what we're doing. One would hope that we're putting this in place so that future boards, future regional governing boards have the ability to address all of the factors, including the traffic factor, whether it becomes an infill project or a new school and a new development. I think that's the purpose, and at least from my perspective, and please staff, correct me if I'm wrong, or the legal team, correct me if I'm wrong, but from my perspective, I think that's really what we're looking for here, is to put something in place so that we don't have to deal with it immediately upon, okay, we got to build a school and we got to build it right now. We get to deal with it ahead of time. And so I think that's what we're after. Commissioners or board members, city council, I keep wanting to call you commissioner, city councilwoman.
Thank you. Is the question today whether we do a project of regional significance, or is it the question of, because I see that policy option 1 is one thing and policy option 2 is another. The public's comment has been that I believe they would like to see it be a project of regional significance, which is not included in policy option 1. Is that correct, or could somebody?
Madam Chair, if I may clarify for the record.
Certainly.
So policy option 1 and 2, they both do require this school facilities plan to be updated every 5 years. But where they differ is that policy option 1, if something is not within that facilities plan and identified and already found in conformance with the regional plan, it would require a project of regional significance review of a school over 800 students. So that 800 number really is, if we're talking about the school district side, it's middle schools and high schools, so the larger schools. Policy option 2, you are correct, it wouldn't require a project of regional significance. Instead, it requires a regional plan amendment, which is 2 public hearings through the Planning Commission and then to this board, versus the conformance review of a project of regional significance, which is only through the Regional Planning Commission. So it takes it above and beyond that facilities plan look, and it says, say something came out of the blue and it wasn't in a facilities plan, we would still be seeing it here at this body.
Can I answer your question?
I don't know.
What,
Okay.
Please put that on the record.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
So we, if memory, and I wish Councilman Lawson was here and Councilwoman Dewar were here, because what we asked for was essentially when a school of 800 students comes forward, and we're using the 800, but we used middle and high school. When a middle or high school comes forward, it automatically triggers the review, a conformance review by the Regional Planning Commission and Regional Governing Board, because it triggered a project of regional significance. That's what I had remembered we gave direction to come back with, and I don't see either one of those options here.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Director. Yes,
Thank you.
please.
So in terms of the direction that was given to staff regarding this item, the conversation around projects of regional significance, as we talked about at your February meeting, those choices are made at the Regional Planning Commission. So the direction that we received from this board was to go to the Regional Planning Commission and have the Regional Planning Commission discuss the item and bring forward their best thoughts and best options around this. To that end, we had a conversation with them, as you saw in the earlier part of the presentation, in January. January. We hosted a 2.5-hour workshop in March with the school district, the public, and the Planning Commission to try and get to the root of what the Planning Commissioners identified were the issues that they felt were being addressed. And then this board had asked for the results of that to be brought back to this board, and that's what we're doing today. So last night, the Planning Commission said, okay, we've had a lot of conversation about this. Staff has worked with staff from the school district, and we've come to some potential options that include, as Lauren has mentioned, policy option 2 actually requires, it's a higher level of review than a PRS. It comes to this board as well because it's a regional plan amendment if it's not actually on the map. And that was something that really, I can say this, really excited the Planning Commission, both the idea of a map in the regional plan itself of school sites, which we don't have right now, and the idea that any type of alteration of that would go to the Planning Commission, but would also come to this board. And that was part of, I do know from last night's conversation, they thought was really important, so, thank you.
But let me just make
Finish.
one, please. Madam Director, the operative statement, if it's not on the map, and that was not the direction that we gave the Planning Commission. We gave them the direction to make an amendment to say schools, high and middle school, trigger a PRS conformance review. That was the direction we gave them.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Board Member Hartung, but that's not the language that was in the motion that we received, that was made that day. It was not specific regarding the language. In fact, we had this conversation at the December meeting, and Councilman Bobzien was still here. He specifically, I remember sitting here, he specifically identified that the conversation was for the RPC to identify what that looks like. Now, the choice that you do have today is to say, okay, we've heard these options, RPC. You can tell the staff to go away and go back to the RPC and tell them that is one of your desires. That's absolutely a possibility. But the direction we received from this board did not specifically tell us to go away and do that.
Devin. Oh, sorry.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I guess I have a more practical question, and I don't know who to best direct this to. It may be Ms. Simon Holland, it may be the school district representatives. I am not interested in making policy based on a very isolated circumstance, which is Wild Creek High School. I think Wild Creek High School is going to be a fabulous project. I'm highly in favor and supportive of it. I think it is unique, and in my lifetime, having been a student of Washoe County School Districts, I can't recall ever in my lifetime that kind of, we'll just say, opportunity and the need sort of married together and happened somewhat more quickly than perhaps is good for the public, but it's better for our students. So my question really is one about which of these options, if either, is going to result in the least amount of time and energy being wasted, and the cost of that time and energy being wasted, so that we can provide appropriate facilities for our young people. Because at the end of the day, it appears to me that policy option 2 perhaps provides a clearer path forward, and that we were in an earlier setting here where we had an applicant who'd been caught up in the loop of all this governmental churning for 19 months. That should not happen. That is what causes school costs to skyrocket. That's what causes building costs to skyrocket. We need to be providing an opportunity, I think, as a regional body to make certain that we are creating the best mode for these projects to be built.
Thank you very much. Ms. Simon Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that I think we all recognize is that the regional plan is both a policy document and a map document that provides for what shall be done where and for what reasons and in what manner. And that's what the Regional Planning Commission has worked with staff and with the school district to bring back to you. It actually provides a greater level of scrutiny and a longer lead time with the 5-year facilities plan. Just like you do in the regional planning process, you have a longer lead time to know what will be done on that particular property. And that was our intent, was to commit to giving the public that understanding of what is planned for what areas. And again, those are responsive to decisions that are being made at the local government level. So the intention is not to subvert any process. It's actually to make a longer lead time. You know, wouldn't we like to know on all infill projects 5 years ahead of time what would be there? So that's really the intention, not to get away from any process, but to do it as has been said. At this body, you would have to find the facilities plan in conformance, and if there are any changes to that facilities plan, they would come to you. And if we brought up something that was not in the facilities plan, then it would have an extra level of scrutiny. So that's really the intention.
Thank you. Mr. Etchart.
So just to add, Pete Etchart, Chief Operating Officer, Washington County School District. So just to add one more thing as far as your specific question about which of these two options is more cumbersome for the district, I would say that, as Katie Simon Holland just mentioned, that either one of these really works for us in regards to we're doing a facility plan, we're showing all of our additional sites, and so that hopefully we would be able to cover everything within 5 years. But if not, we're worried about policy option 1 and the project of regional significance being more cumbersome for the district. Under NRS 278, we have 5 years when we do a set aside of property to buy that property. We have 10 years to actually build the school. Now, we've had situations at the school district where we couldn't meet those requirements. We didn't have the money to buy the property, and it went back to the developer. PRS, the project of regional significance process, is so late because we have to now buy the property oftentimes based on the timing. We have to go through the design, we have to do elevations, we go through all this, and then we come to an elected group such as yourself. It puts that taxpayer dollars at risk. What we like about the regional plan amendment process, it's much earlier in the process. We're still seeing, and you're seeing, as was said, you're seeing all the information, but it's being done much earlier, so that if there's concerns about that individual site, that we know that going forward without having spent a lot of taxpayer dollars to go into the process so late. So kind of a wordy answer, but we are very much more comfortable with policy option 2 in the regional plan amendment process.
Thank you, Mr. Etchart. I appreciate your comments. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess the point for me is while the Washoe County School District, and I appreciate and I understand their position, but taxpayer dollars are still being spent. In order to widen Eagle Canyon in Spanish Springs, I now have to ask RTC, what was the chairman of RTC, Ron Smith, who's now Bob Lucy, and others on the RTC board, to find money in the budget to accommodate impacts from the Washoe County School District, with all due respect. So the citizens are still having to bear this cost, but it's foisted off on a different agency. So my point is that I'm only asking for the impacts, no different. And look, and I appreciate educating children. I'm not suggesting that we don't move forward, but somehow, some way, impacts have to be accounted for throughout the entire system.
Yes, Councilwoman Breckus.
Scenario of option 2, if you're thinking about the RTC component, the regional commitment of transportation investment to these regional impacting developments, it's better to have it on the facilities plan because then it can all get queued up into those capital improvement plans. I mean, I'll be very perfectly clear as I think the choice of the school district to build at Wild Creek was a terrible one. I think that if you live in a 40-year-old neighborhood, a 50-year-old neighborhood, number one land use policy at the local level should be land use stability. And a zoning code that says a golf course is public facility and so can a huge monstrous school be public facility and go through the same zoning district and same change of use, if you will, is a terrible zoning framework. And as we move forward, whichever way we go, I think we need to be mindful of this. If they have chosen a Park Lane site, which, anything could go on Park Lane site for us because that's our most intense urban area, but setting to a suburban land use, that land use stability framework, which I think is a local zoning one, was not protective, and it was a bad choice, but I don't think it was regional. I had argued to everyone I could find, HUG should have been rebuilt, If they could move 400 kids out to Mount Rose Elementary School for 2 years while they did that, they sure as heck could have moved out these HUG kids for 2 years to do what school districts do in more mature built-out environments. But having said that left that there, and I don't know if the intent of people here is to still capture Wild Creek and have this body have a say on it. That's not the item before. The item before is this map concept, and I think it's a good one. I really think that's the good process. I've been wanting to see projects of regional significance kind of get tailored down because I think only one has ever been overturned in the whole history of doing them, and they don't come up to us anyway, and I want to focus more on the regional plan. So I'm going to endorse option 2. Maybe before, if we were, I expressed interest in project of regional significance, I more wanted this body to be in the game when the school district moved forward, and as far as I can see it, going forward, if a Wild Creek sort of thing came, they would be the first stop. And if they got a yay or nay, they would not, they'd have a land option agreement, and if they didn't get yay or nay, that option would go and no acquisition would follow through. So I think it would be captured. But it's not going to capture and solve the Wild Creek problem. I don't know where that issue is. Maybe it's the school board, re-elections. Maybe it's Sparks Planning Commission. I don't know. I'm just here at regional with my regional hat on.
Thank you. Any other comments from any member of the board? We do.
Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am. The voice from heaven.
I support option 2 of the 2. I think is a better choice. I really feel the point of this whole, what we had asked, is for the regional planning governing board and all the agencies and all 3 jurisdictions to be working with the school district for better future planning, for the impacts of that planning, for the infrastructure, everything from traffic to water to all of those impacts that we need to look at on big projects. On schools do impact no matter where they, and we're building a lot of them. So sitting on the capital funding committee, I'm watching the money, I'm watching, the costs, and I think being better partners in the future for the whole region for planning, it just makes sense for us to go in this direction, and I would support policy option 2.
Thank you, Councilwoman Bybee. We do need to go to public comment. So let's open public comment this time.
All right, first up I have George Lee, and then after that, Kim Tracy.
Good afternoon again.
Good afternoon again. It's George Lee, 3506 Brassey Drive, Sparks, Nevada. Give me a little latitude here because we're going to talk about an example of the public interest being overcome by personal interest. And that would be, you just adjudicated or voted on the option about the area up by Red Rock. I know it's not on this item, but that was caused by the Reno, taking that under their wing 2 years ago, right? That meant that they could have less oversight because Reno is less oversight than the county. That's what my understanding is. Their zoning is less arduous. And I agree with you. This really doesn't have anything to do with, because by the time they'll be breaking ground probably long before the option 2 or option 1 take effect. It's not going to affect Wild Creek School, or the Wild Creek project, I should say. Now, the problem is that then you take if you follow the example of this policy, either one of the policies, anybody can make a map and drag and drop stuff onto the map. It takes all of 30 minutes. Just open the program up and there it is. And so the idea of this being an arduous thing, to have them go, well, we have this property, we'll just outline that and this and this and this, that's silly. That's just an over complication that's not costly. I also, during this project, during the Wild Creek project, I heard Mr. Etchart say that it was a good thing that we were waiting and not breaking ground in last fall. because the cost would be reduced after going through a whole period of them saying the cost would be greater. So once again, Yogi Berra and the problem with predictions is they're in the future, you know, and what the cost will be, you can look at, you know, it depends on a lot of factors, and it's not fact until it happens, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, I have Kim Tracy, and then after that, Wesley Griffin.
Good afternoon again.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Kim Tracy. And I guess the first question that I'd like you to think about is, as I understand it, this is not an either or. This can be a combination of option one and option two. And I'd like to thank Mr. Etchart for saying that either one is good with the school district. I don't think either one is good with the community. I think that you need to combine these two things, make the map happen and also make it a PRS. And if there's a risk of potential risk for the WCSD, I don't think it's a potential risk. I think it's an additional oversight, and I think that the WCSD has been offered a level of autonomy over the last however many years that has made them probably one of the most unpopular and distrusted entities in the community. What I don't understand is why all of you aren't communicating a little more with your community, I think. And I get that not a lot of us come here and talk, but I can assure you that those of us who do come here and talk, even though you get tired of us, I'm sure, are not poorly educated. You got well-educated, successful people that come here, and the Wild Creek is a perfect example. I hate to see this happen to anybody else. So, and even myself down the road. Mr. Von Hartong's example is perfect. What if I decide to sell my house that's somewhat near Wild Creek when the traffic gets horrendous, and I decide to move to another park area or near another park, or I want to make sure this doesn't happen to me again. So a PRS, what is wrong with making it a PRS? And furthermore, 800 students it doesn't work for most of us because that's only students. That doesn't include staff. It needs to include staff as well. So since it's not an either or, and since the PRS or your whole PRS is getting an update, please take the time, maybe send them back to the drawing board. I was at some of those meetings, and I do remember it being about a PRS, not about a PRS or a different option. So yeah, the map is a great idea, but like Mr. Hartung says, that doesn't cover us all. And this time it's our neighborhood, it could be yours. I mean, I don't understand why you don't understand where the public is coming from on this. I just would implore you to be a better voice for your community. Listen to us. And I keep hearing about how the public was included in these workshops. I would love to know how you get included as the public at these workshops. I gave my name, I gave my email, I gave it directly to Ms. Robinson. I've signed up for email alerts on your website for both the commission and the governing board. I was not notified, nor were any of the people that have come to you and spoken at these meetings yet. So I guess I would really like to see you not even move on this today. Send it back to the drawing board, make it a PRS as well as having the map. An extra level of oversight isn't going to hurt anybody. Least of all, it's not going to hurt the community, your taxpayers, the people that you guys are supposed to be looking after. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, I have Wesley Griffin, and after that is Darla Lee.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Wes Griffin again. Thanks for the opportunity. Kim must have some very psychic abilities because she said very much of what I'm thinking. Why does it have to be just one or the other? Why can't we take the best of both policy options and combine them? Moving forward, policy option 2, I think most of the people in the Wild Creek area, or really anybody that had a chance to really think about this, would say that's a great idea. The problem is it doesn't address some of the problems with Wild Creek, with the school at Wild Creek. Why can't we make, if we can't make schools of 800 students or more a project of regional significance going forward, why can't we do it now? And then in the future, exempt that particular part of the process. Problem is there hasn't been adequate oversight for this current decision. The public has been coming now for 2 years. We've been coming and expressing our concern about this. We have asked to be made a part of some of the workshops. We've been ignored. It's as if, we don't matter. So why can't we make this a project of regional significance for this particular case and go forward? Maybe it's not necessary, but it is, in our opinion, necessary now. All along, there has not been enough oversight. I remember when we pointed out that there was no plan B for a $200 to $300 million project. If this was done privately, somebody would be looking for a new job. Suddenly then, now we come up with not only plan B, but plan C and D and E and G and F and almost the whole alphabet. And it was done. I asked if I could be a part of that. I was told no. It was done with people, the people that did review these things were either working with the school district as contractors or school district employees. It was a CYA project. Nobody wants to hear the other side. There are other people involved in our county here besides the Washoe County School District. And to try to suggest that this is either for the students or for the public is that's dishonest. Because our students are a part of the public too. And the decisions we make as far as our recreational area and our green space affects them too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, I have Darla Lee, and then after that is Gail Miller.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Lee.
Good afternoon. Darla Lee for the record. I feel like I have to state the obvious. Huge projects like the current slate of new high schools in Washoe County, projects that will end up costing who knows how much, because WC1 has made available an endless stream, an unending, no sunsetted stream of money to build schools. And, as we've stated and has been expressed here, no one's against building schools, but these schools need to be, if they're going to be 2 million, 3 million, if there's no limit on the money, then there should absolutely be some kind of regional significance that's going to be, set. And as Mr. Von Hartog very, rightly expressed, that Wild Creek is a good example of things that were done not transparently, at least according to the community. Just because I happen to live near Wild Creek and appreciate it, I don't golf, but that really is a set aside. And it seems like now we're facing something that's, okay, so Wild Creek is a done deal, and that's, we just have to suck it up. But at least going forward, I'm wondering why these PRSs can't be determined on the amount of money that's being spent. If these millions and millions of dollars, whether it's a grammar school, a middle school, or a high school, if they're gobbling up so much acreage as well as spending so much money, then why isn't that a trigger for a PRS rather than just how many students might be there? Or this 5-year facility plan, right, that's great, have some, too bad it wasn't in place before, obviously for our sake, but going forward, at least that can be one bright spot. But I hesitate to even endorse that because that facility plan is all done by the school district's experts. And I'm sorry, they don't have a very good track record as far as I'm concerned. And If it's just their facility plan that's being added, well, it's kind of like the fox guarding the hen house. I would like to see these two proposals not acted on today and perhaps rethink what this PRS should really include. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Gail Miller, and then last one after that is going to be Jerry Hecka.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Gail Miller. I live in Sparks, Nevada. And I appreciate everything that all of you have said today. I think it's a good discussion. Thank you, Ms. Bruckus. Thank you, Mr. Hartung. Thank you, Mr. Reese and Ms. Bagler. Some good things have been said. I would like some of the other people have spoken, to see maybe a tweaking a little bit of option 2 to somehow, I'm not exactly sure how to tweak it, but maybe a combination. I'd also like to see that maybe Mr. Lawson could have some input on this, so maybe it could be postponed one meeting. Perhaps, I don't know if Ms. Dewar's still on the board, but she had some strong feelings. I'd like to see her be able to give her feelings too. Maybe just a little bit of tweaking of these two together, or two with some additional things. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Last one I have is Jerry Hecka.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much. I'm Jerry Hecka. I live in Lemon Valley. So I get to see a lack of planning every day when I go home. And that's one of the reasons that I think that this needs some adjusting here. The school this size needs to be looked at. Whether it's a school, it's no different than if a developer come to you and going to develop 10,000 acres. It's still a huge thing, and it's going to impact a lot of people. We haven't been given true stories through this. We've heard so many numbers. Mr. Eckert was quoted on the 13th of March that there'll be over 3,000 students. Now, we're talking about 800. Now, I know we have to have a starting point. He also says they don't create any new traffic. They move the traffic pattern. However, if they're going to redo Hug High School into an industrial, there's still going to be traffic for that. Now, granted, that isn't happening right now, but it's in the hopper to happen. So I think that we definitely need some oversight on this for enough people to look at it and ask enough hard questions, because we cannot rely on the school district to be straight up with us. And as far as the workshop, we had several people that wanted to get involved in it. They weren't invited. But having Mr. Eckert kind of sit in on it and direct what numbers should be used is like having the fox count the chickens in the hen house. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thorne. I appreciate you being here. And that is is there any other public comment? Anybody else who wants to make public comment? Okay, thank you very much. We will close public comment, bring it back to the board. Commissioner Hartung?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. So I have been in contact with Mr. Lawson because I don't believe that this was the direction that we had originally given, or the intent, I will put it that way. In option 1, I would say if a new school or expansion of over 800 students is contemplated, it requires a review of a school as a project of regional significance. That's what I had recalled that we had talked about. I'm going to ask right now, Madam Chair, I will make a motion that we delay this until we can give Mr. Lawson and Ms. Dewar an opportunity so that we have our regular board back and we can give direction again, because as I recall, and I'm not trying to hobble the school district, I'm just trying to make sure that the process that occurs is fair, transparent, and equitable to all agencies across the board. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Thank you, Commissioner Hartung, and I have a second from Councilwoman Weber. Any comments? Yeah, Councilwoman Breckus.
You know, first of all, I have a hard time here. I think that I do not like delaying action for the absence of any individual. I really don't. I don't even think Mr. Lawson's been here the 2 prior times we've spoken over this, and Sparks has their full complement here today, right? Yeah. Ms. Dewar wasn't able to find a substitute, but I also feel like that we have a good balance. I think this is a good way to go. Frankly, a lot of the issues of the traffic and the height of the building and this should be taken down at the zoning level. And you can be sure when Reno gets into their zoning code, I'm going to make sure that any school over 800 requires a special use permit. So it's going to go through planning commission approval. That is the best way to take it. It's better to take it on this facilities plan for all the regional infrastructure providers to see what's coming. That's the way I think we should go and keep it at this high level. And the reason we only meet quarterly, although we're talking about some special meetings, is we roll this off, it just continues to get rolled off. And I wanted to talk about the regional plan update today. And we're not there. So I'm not going to support the motion, and if it doesn't go, I'll make another one to move forward with option 2. But
Madam
Okay,
Chair.
thank you. Yes, Mr. Reese.
I'm also not going to support.
Councilman Reese.
Thank you, though. We have so many titles. I'm also not going to support a delay, nor do I believe that a PRS is a good policy option for a school, and so I'm not going to be supporting that part of it either. I do believe option 2 is the best from a very high-level overview and support my colleague, Councilwoman Breckes' position.
Thank you. And Mayor Smith, did I see you wanting to make a comment?
No. Is this on? Can you hear me? You know, I'm fully aware of Mr. Lawson's position on this. I'll be voting with Mr. Lawson, but I kind of worry about the stigma that you're giving as alternates, so we don't know what we're doing and we don't pay attention. And maybe that's the case in some issues, but I am fully aware of what's going on here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Councilman Anderson.
Yeah, thank you. So I am an alternate, and I'm not as familiar with this. So issuing it as a project of regional significance, what all does that entail time-wise, and what steps are added into the process by that?
Madam Director, could you answer? Well, let Ms. Knox answer.
I was hiding, sorry. For the record, Lauren Knox with Regional Planning. So a project of regional significance, depending kind of on what that threshold's set at, basically what we would be reviewing at that point are impacts from the school as they relate to the regional plan. So, and that would be a hearing with the Regional Planning Commission. So it's one public hearing through this agency.
So what does that mean time-wise?
Time-wise, so we have monthly meetings for the Regional Planning Commission. So depending on when we get the submittal in, it generally we can turn a project around in about 60 days or so, depending. But really, it's one public hearing for us.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may also
Yes, Madam Director.
address that question. So the other item to note about a project of regional significance is it comes to this board after it has been approved at the local jurisdictional level. And so it's later in the process. It's already received its approvals at the local level.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Hecka.
So one of the things that triggered this conversation is when you have large facilities that trigger multi-jurisdictional uses. And so the idea here is this, and I'll again use Wild Creek. Wild Creek will draw from Washoe County unincorporated, it will draw from the city of Sparks, and it will draw from the city of Reno. That, to me, triggers a project of regional significance because you've got 3 jurisdictions involved with that process. I would be fully supportive of option 1 if it said, if a new school or a school expansion of over 800 students is contemplated, it requires a review of a school as a project of regional significance. Leave the facilities plan out, and basically what the trigger is if they put it in the facilities plan, then it doesn't require that. That's the caveat. And I say if it is a school of over 800, when you start dealing with schools that are larger, what happens is it becomes multi-jurisdictional. Spanish Springs, perfect example, unincorporated and city of Sparks. And in fact, I believe there probably may be some of the lower kids in Sun Valley who actually reside in the city of Reno that may attend Spanish Springs High School also. My point is that I do not recall that this is the direction that we gave. I know staff has listened, and if they did listen to the minutes and that was what they got out of it, it was certainly not the intent. And so that's why I feel that a delay so that we can give some direction back to the RPC with very, very clear intent so that they understand what it is that we are looking for.
Thank you,
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Hartung. And so with that, unless someone else has a comment, Councilwoman Bybee, did you have something you want to add? I love talking to the heavens.
No, I don't. I'm having a little trouble. I don't have a great connection, so you're kind of in and out. Is there a motion on the table yet?
Yes, there's a motion to table this made by Commissioner Hartung and seconded by City Councilwoman Weber to table this until you're back, and until Naomi Dewar is back, and until Ed Lawson is back. That's the motion on the floor right now. And with that, I think we will take a vote since I see nothing else. So all those in favor of the motion as stated, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Oh, okay, and we're being asked for a voice count for the record by our legal team, who are giving the executive director the high sign. Voice count. So let's go back and do a voice count on that, please.
All right, Jenny Breckes.
Nay.
Bonnie Weber.
Yes, you are.
Marsha Burke-Bigler.
Aye.
Charlene Bybee.
Aye.
Devin Reese. Sorry, I have a lot of names written over here. Paul Anderson.
Aye.
Ron Smith.
Aye.
Von Hartung.
Aye.
Jean Herman.
It would appear the ayes have it. So under that scenario, we are going to table this entire issue. I don't know if we can get it in the next meeting, which is the 25th. It'll probably be in the late May meeting. Probably be back on the agenda in late May.
And Madam Chair, we can talk about that with you as well.
Okay. So, thank you very much. Thank all of you who came. I appreciate you being here. And with that, we will close item B and move on to reports. So, members, are there any members and directors' reports? Anybody have anything they want to add after this grueling meeting? It didn't last 8 hours. That's what my last one lasted. Okay, so in that case, our next regularly scheduled meeting is set for June 13th, and we have a Madam Executive Director, Madam President, I like calling you that. Could you tell what dates are the next meeting?
Madam Chair, we've talked about, again, on April 25th, so that is 2 weeks from today, special meeting. As I mentioned, we have sent out appointments to your calendars in terms of email, and then we are discussing a later special meeting in May, probably in that second or third week. We are hoping to have that date sewn up within the next few days.
Thank you
We would
very
send an
much.
appointment to you as well.
And while you're speaking, Ms. Madam Director, do you have any other reports you want to add?
There are none, thank you.
Okay, how about a legal report?
Madam Chair, nothing at this time.
Thank you very much. So with that, we will go to requests for, the board report from our Washoe County board member, Washoe County School District board member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the work that many of the elected officials, including Ms. Bybee, do on the Capital Facilities Funding Committee. And we do have $40 million of expenditures for existing schools, for repairs to our older core schools going into effect this year. Yeah, and that's on top of more than $20 million a year for the last several years. So, and of course, as you may have heard, we did have the decision from our school naming committee, our recommendation, and we will be naming the school in the Arrow Creek area, middle school, after Marcy Hers, who was a great Olympic athlete and founded the Sky Tavern program. So, appreciate, of course, as you all know, we're working with the legislature on school funding, and it's an uphill battle, but we'll continue to work on that. So, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. And if I wore my glasses, I would have seen that all on my own without having to have it pointed out to me. All right, now, do we have requests for future agenda items? Members of the board? Madam Director? Nothing? So then we will move to our final public comment. Do we have any final public comment?
I have none.
None? Okay, we'll close public comment. Any written correspondence?
There is none.
And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.